Now, let me show you an incredibly important idea, and that's to do with the level of the kick. Take a look at Traktor. Here you can see the coloured waveform called spectrum. The powerful thing about this is it allows you to see what elements are what. The red frequencies are the bass frequencies, the low frequencies, and the blue frequencies are the high frequencies, such as a hi-hat, with everything in between being the colours in between, such as say green or orange, or low plus high frequencies, red plus blue giving pink. And so when you look at the waveform in this coloured view, you can literally see how loud each element is. So you can see precisely what level the kick is in the final master. The kicks are low frequencies, and so the kicks are red. Can you see the kicks? Those repeated red bits? These are kicks. And across every genre, notice how they always go to the top of the waveform. In the final master, in the main sections, the kicks always go to 0. They're always maximized in the waveform, hitting the very top. Therefore, if you think about it, everything can be measured relative to the kick. The limiter will always turn it up eventually, but before the limiter, you can measure everything relative to the kick. In the final master, the kick will hit the very top, and so you can kind of measure everything as relative to this kick. Is the hi-hat, say, 2 dB quieter than the kick? Is the bass 1 dB quieter? Or 5? Is the snare 1 dB quieter? Or not quieter at all? Is the snare the same level as the kick? Either way, because we know the kick will always go to the top of the waveform, nothing will peak higher than the kick. Everything is either the same level as the kick or quieter, or more precisely, lower in level. This is a fundamental principle in electronic music, in mixing and mastering. The kick will always go to the top of the waveform. And therefore, when mixing, keep your eye on the levels. If you look at enough waveforms, you can see what everyone else is doing. You can see precisely where the hi-hat is relative to the kick. You know the level of the kick, looking at the level meters, and you know the level of the hi-hat, looking at the level meters, and therefore simply set them accordingly. If you see your favorite tracks having the hi-hat 3 dB quieter than the kick, you can set this precisely in the mix stage. Remember, if you have everything balanced in the mix, mastering's almost trivial. It's just a case of throwing a limiter on there and double checking loudness. Furthermore, if in doubt, it's better to set your kick higher in level than lower in level. As think about it from the limiter's perspective. Imagine you're the limiter. If the kick is higher than it should be, then you're going to be limiting mostly the kick. But if the kick is lower than it should be, you're going to be limiting everything else. If all you're doing is limiting the kick, that's predictable, that's easy, that's the same thing over and over again. But if you're limiting the vocal at one moment, and the synth another, a hi-hat another, a snare the other, that's incredibly difficult to do. And maybe the settings that worked great for the snare don't sound good on the vocal, and vice versa. Whereas if it's only the kick triggering the limiter, or mostly the kick triggering the limiter, that's a simple, predictable thing to work with, and it'll make your job much easier. And that's why it's better to set your kick higher in level than lower. But of course, still try and get it right first off. In the first place, take a look at waveforms, especially in this colored view if possible, so you can see precisely where people are setting levels, and build this into your understanding of how a track should be structured, how a track should be gain staged. Once you're familiar with the way a track should look, you'll be setting levels almost intuitively. Like when I'm setting the level of a bass, I know to set it, say, 1 dB quieter than the kick, or 5 dB, depending on the genre. But I know this because I've looked at literally thousands of waveforms. In dubstep, it's all the same height as the kick, but in, say, tech house, it's quieter. Better to get it right in the mix than try to fix it at mastering. If your kick is way too quiet, there's no way to really fix that at mastering. Yes, there are a few tricks to potentially help, but it's going to be a crude and incredibly imperfect solution. It would have been much better to get the kick right before mastering. But if in doubt, set the kick higher in level than you think it needs to be. A dB or 2, or even 3 or 4. Limiters are especially good at limiting kicks, as they're simple and predictable. Thanks for watching.